So welcome to this beautiful full moon night. And I'm so happy that there was this divine coincidence of the full moon and part 2 of the Awaken series. So today, almost through the day, I have been downloading, in a sense, information that JadeFire would like me to speak of, and as he would tell me things, I made my points so that I don't forget anything he wants me to say. He wants you to know that though every session seems, in a sense, separate by itself, the Awaken series are a continuation, and that one part of truth that is revealed to us or spoken of in an earlier meeting leads to the next one. And so he urges all of us not to think of each meeting as just separate by itself, but for ourselves to find the continuing link, because that will make it far more tangible for us in our daily lives, and it will become more significant as the Awaken series. Changing what is wrong in your world. Initially, when I received this subject from him, I assumed, wrongly, I realize now, I assumed that he was going to talk about the changes in our world at large. And I therefore assumed that we would be talking about things like political scenarios and economic scenarios and, the imbalances in our social systems. And when he started on the information today, I realized that that word that he used, what is wrong in your world, refers to our personal world. Changing what is wrong in your world, not in the world as a whole. And of course, he goes down the line and he makes us see how changes in our world will naturally then bring changes in the world at large. But to look at the problems in the world at large actually comes from, and this was, I found a very interesting perspective that he gave me. He says, when you look at the problems in the world at large, your brain has been conditioned to automatically come from blame. And as he explained to us last time, blame comes only from a scarcity mindset. When we shift to the abundance mindset, we move into self-responsibility. And when we move into self-responsibility, we look at making changes in my world, in the world that I create, in the world that I influence. And so I take responsibility for making those changes in my world instead of looking outside at the world and instantly blaming the politicians, blaming authority figures, blaming men, blaming women, blaming whoever. And so today is really about that, changing what is not working in your world. And that was something that I asked him about first. I said, why have you given me this very interesting title, Changing What Is Not Working in Your World? You've not said right, you've not said wrong. And he said, I'm surprised you asked me this question, because I have told you repeatedly, beloved, there is no right and there is no wrong. Either something works for you and that is why you call it right, or it doesn't work for you and that is why you call it wrong. But for another person, what does not work for you shall work for that person. So your wrong becomes that person's right. And when you have something that is so non-stable in its definition, it cannot ever be considered as truth. So it's changing what is not working in your world. And each one of you, he says, will know what is not working in your world, in your personal world. We're not going to look beyond. But he says, you are right. Just as there are things not working in your personal world, there are many things that are not working in the larger world all around you, of which you are such a big part. And all those problems have been addressed over time. He made me realize that none of these problems that we are referring to in our larger world are new. He says, what is new? There is nothing that is new. You have been facing these problems over decades. You have tried to address them politically, by making changes in your political systems, by sometimes making changes in your political parties, and you have not found the answer. The problems have remained the same. You, as a collective, have tried to find economic solutions to these problems, and you haven't been able to. The problems have remained the same. You have even tried to find military solutions to your problems by sometimes resorting to war and bloodshed and attack and battle. But even that has not solved the problem or problems. You have tried to address them socially, by social groups coming together, forming themselves into communities that are thinking of the collective good, communities that are coming together for greater benefit of all. But still, even that has not been able to address even one of these problems. And so he says, yes, there are things not working in the world at large, and none of your methods have worked. Political hasn't worked, economic hasn't worked, social hasn't worked, military hasn't worked. And it has not worked because your world, your personal, individual world has not changed. And he says, all of you are caught in this misconception that what is not working is due to someone else's fault. And he says, today's session is to bring to your awareness so that you do not pretend that you are still asleep, so that you realize that, yes, I am an awakened human being, and I'm not going to pretend anymore that I'm asleep. We have to bring it to your awareness that the problems in the world outside are not being resolved because you are not changing your personal world. And so, of course, the question was, then what do we do to change that? If all these solutions that you have named above have not worked, then JadeFire, what do we do? And he says, you do exactly what you all know. When something does not work, what do? You try something new. You look for a new way. So now you know that political resolutions are not the answer. Economic resolutions are not the answer. Military resolutions are not the answer. Social resolutions are not the answer. What is the one way that you have not attempted to resolve? What is that one way? And he says the way is the spiritual way. You now have to look at a spiritual solution. And he says, because the solution is spiritual, you cannot look at this as the world at large. Because if you try to impart what you understand as spirituality to everyone, there will be a large percentage who will not accept. And in fact, what you will create is more conflict, because then there will be a conflict between those who believe in their truth of spirituality and those who don't. So if you are choosing the spiritual way of changing what does not work in your world, this change has to be and can be only in your personal world. But, he says, but at every point, of course, the main goal is the ultimate good of the collective, which includes the whole world. So yes, we are training our focus even at that. But we are going to start from here. And in fact, not only start from here, we are going to start and finish here. We are not going beyond each one's personal world. We are going to start and finish here. So you're going to make changes in what is not working in your world. And that's it. But as he says, if every single person that you talk to, that will talk to others, who will talk to others, who will talk to others, if this goes on and each one makes changes in their personal world, 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 eventually leads to the collective changing. And what is most important, that collective shall change with the abundance mindset, not a scarcity mindset that therefore brings in blame. And I said, wow, that's a completely different way of looking at resolving world problems. There are world problems, but you don't try and resolve them at that level. You only try and resolve them at your level. So I asked him, what is the biggest shift that each one of us has to make? What is that one thing that we have to change so that we can begin to change what is not working in our world? And there started his series for the day. Not the biggest change, he says, the only change. The only change that is required is to shift entirely from separation. For so many generations, for thousands of years, we have been conditioned to believe in separation. Forget about the separation of us versus them, which is the them in the world at large. Forget about that separation. We even live in separation in our own homes. There is separation in our very homes, in our family structures, in our relationships with our staff, in our relationships with our families, our relatives, our neighbors, our friends. There is separation even there. Why are we looking at a larger picture of us versus them? And though I appreciate this shift that he is talking about, and though I know intellectually that belief in separation is the root cause of all our human problems and challenges, I somehow think it seems sometimes to me as insurmountable. And so I asked him, I said, why are we so entrenched in separation? However much we really work on ourselves, we work on ourselves as spiritual beings having a human experience, we experience the God in us, we do, at some level, we do experience the God in others. And yet, we have not been able to break free from separation. Why? And his answer quite took me aback. And he says the problem started from that moment when religion began to teach you about God. Now, this was an answer I just did not expect. When religion began to teach you about God, that was that first moment of complete separation. It made you aware, it wanted to make you aware that you and God were separate, that you were human, that you were only a mortal being, and that this higher power or God was certainly not you, and you were certainly not that power. And the seed of separation was sown there when, who knows when, the human race was indoctrinated with this belief that God and human beings are separate. And JadeFire says, then as a natural outcome, the separation began to grow. And then you were not only separate from God, but you were separate from those who made you believe that they are better than you are. Right? So they are teachers and they are priests and they are rulers of society. And then this spread even more. Not only were you made to believe that someone else was better than you, but when you looked around, you realized that you were better than others. And so this energy infiltrated into every aspect of our lives. The most minute aspect of our lives was and is determined by separation. And therefore, from there comes today's scenario where it's my religion versus your religion, my country versus your country, my family versus your family, my community versus your community, my culture versus your culture, and on and on and on. JadeFire says, in order to remove the separation mindset, you have to go back to the point of original indoctrination. And that original indoctrination is the teaching about God. And the teaching that a higher power exists, which JadeFire says very much does exist. There is no taking away that truth. Whether you call it God or a higher power or a universe or source or all that is, there is no taking away from that truth. That exists. What has been corrupted and has therefore not remained truth anymore is the second part that you were indoctrinated with, and that is you are separate from that power. You are separate from that source. You are separate from that force that you call God. And in order to rid yourself of that indoctrination, you have to reprogram yourself completely and utterly to know, not only to intellectually believe, but to know with every cell and atom of your being, to know that you and that force are not only not separate, but that you and that force are in fact inseparable. You and that force are inseparable. What we have been taught over thousands of years, and what some of us still continue to teach our children, is that we are sinners, we are mortals, we are flawed, we are tainted, and therefore we can never aspire to godhood. And in fact, to even talk of aspiring to godhood, some believe is an absolute blasphemy. But to make any change in your world, and remember, I am first talking about our personal world. To make any change in your world, you have to rewrite. You've got to erase that lie, and you've got to write the truth in every cell of your being. You have to write the truth in every cell of your being. And so he's given us the first exercise for this week. And that is every day for 7 minutes. And he says 7 minutes shall be enough to do this. So we don't need to do it for more. Every day for 7 minutes, one by one by one, you write the truth in every cell of your body. Of course, I asked him, I said, how do I know? How do I write in every cell? How do I know how many cells I have? And he says, no. When you continually write for 7 minutes, you shall have written in every cell of your body. And that is why he says we are giving you 7 minutes. So I asked, do I have to write pen and paper? Or can I write as a visual exercise? And he recommends that we write as a visual exercise because then it trains the power of the physical lobes of the brain. The right lobe and the left lobe both focus their energies simultaneously on a single goal, which instantly brings your yin and yang into balance. And it is in that state that you then visualize yourself writing. What will you write? God and I are inseparable. God and I are one. And that's our first exercise. We have to change the cellular programming that has been coming to us through the ages. And without doing anything, it is become part of our children's programming. Now, when each one of us takes charge of changing that program, we shall be changing the energy that we emit. When we change the energy that we emit, our immediate surroundings, our family, our staff, our friends, our neighbors, our relatives, receive that energy first. When they receive that energy, it rings a bell of long forgotten memory in their energy structure. And slowly, even though they may not be doing the exercise of visual writing, slowly their memory shall awaken. And he says, beloved, that is how you shall change the world. He believes that there has been no greater moment of shift and potential shift than the present. This time that we are living in, by its very force, enhances every tiny endeavor that you and I make. That 7 minutes that we will use in the day shall have the benefit, because of the time we are living in, shall have the benefit of 70 minutes of that kind of change. He, of course, says everyone has a choice. Your task is just to inform. Their task is to take it further or not. We have a choice to stand by and watch everything that is going wrong in our world and everything that is going wrong in our world. We have that choice. We can stand by and watch. We can stand by and complain. We can stand by and whine. We can stand by and get disturbed. Or we can do something. He says the time for proactive change on the outside has still not come. What has come right now is a spiritual change, a change in your spirit structure that is being influenced by the programmed brain that you live in separation, that you are in fact separate from everyone around you, which means starting from your children. So let's rewind, go back to where we got interrupted. So we do have that choice. We have the choice to just stand by and watch and blame and be disturbed, or be disinterested. Be disinterested because, hey, I am rich enough, I am comfortable enough, I have enough clout and enough money and enough power to pay my way through everything. Why am I interested? We have that choice. We also have the choice to do something. And as I just said, the time for proactive measures has still not yet fully come. What is here and what is now is the spiritual change. You and I have to change that spirit structure that is being influenced, that is being suppressed by a programmed brain that lives in separation. But the time has come for people like you and I to be the frontliners. And we don't have to be frontliners by taking up banners and marching around. We don't have to be frontliners by shouting and screaming. We have to be frontliners in making the shift here. We have to be frontliners by first instantly, as in right now, as soon as this class ends, sitting down for 7 minutes, and I've already done this today, as soon as he told me, for 7 minutes, and writing every single cell in my body, rewriting the programming in that cell. yes, even as we rewrite, you and I are both going to get caught in the programming of thousands of years. We are going to get caught. It doesn't mean that in 7 days this is going to change. Just like the scarcity mindset doesn't change in 7 days. But if we start and we refuse to stop, and we just go on and on and on and on, we shall be the frontliners who shall make the change. And JF spoke to me about leadership, but I'm going to share that with you. And he said something very valid. He says, beloved, a leader is not one who wants to keep others behind him or her. A leader is one who says, wait, let me take the risk first on your behalf. Let me clear the way for you. Once I clear all the thorns and the rocks in your way, then you come with me. That's a leader. Do you want to be that leader? Do you want to clear the thorns and the rocks in the way of others? If your answer is yes, then you shall start today, now. And that scarcity mindset that we learned about, you shall not forget that, because we have another thing to remember. And that's why JF said, it's not one part at a time. It's a series. It's continuous. Don't drop that because today you are listening to this. That is as valid. In fact, as JF mentioned, your scarcity mindset comes from separation. Because I believe I am separate from you, I don't want you to have anything, because if you have it, then I don't have it. That separation mindset brings in hoarding, brings in miserliness, brings in gluttony. Because you and I are separate. In every cell of our bodies, that's what we believe, that we are all separate. And he gave me the most beautiful example. And he says the Lord Buddha has taught this, but humanity hasn't learned from it. Go to the seaside and look at the waves. And you see the waves coming in. And your attention is drawn to each single wave. And as you focus on one wave and another wave and the wave that's coming there, they seem to you as 3 separate waves. And then they come closer to you. And then they crash. And when you look, there are no waves. What you see is a sea of water. And now, can you decipher where that one wave is and where the second one is and where the third one is? Because they have crashed into the sea. And he says, beloved, awakening is crashing into the cosmic force. The ego crashes into the cosmic force. And when the ego crashes, there is no separate wave left. And this rewriting in our cellular structure is the beginning of that crash. So he says the time has come now for truth seekers. And the universe is strongly empowering truth seekers. Who are these truth seekers? Some of them are you and I, seekers of spiritual truths. And the others are the earthly truth seekers, and they are as important, and we are as important as they are. And these are going to be people like journalists and reporters and investigators and just common people who are going to say, we refuse to accept the lies. We are here to seek the truth. But their truth will be an earthly truth. Who did what, where, how, when, why? And they are needed and we are needed. And though they might completely not believe in what we do, in fact, that group and our group, we are one and the same. Do not make a separation in that. We are all truth seekers. And again, to use what seemed to be an old cliche, and the truth shall set you free. And it is the truth that shall set us free. Ever since I read a few days ago of a couple of things in our country that really disturbed me, and I've been really working so hard on the scarcity mindset, and I knew that I was disturbed and agitated because my reactions were from that mindset. And I was chatting with JadeFire to say, help me here. I know I am getting caught in my emotion and my judgment. Help me here. And today he helped me and he said, you believe, beloved, you believe that corruption and lies and what you might choose to call evil and cruelty and bestiality are raising their heads like never before. And in these last few days, somewhere you have been floundering in your faith. And I had to admit that that is true. My faith has been floundering. But he says, you are not being able to see that what is happening to humanity, what is happening to the entire collective, and the universe sees everyone as one, we judge them as X and Y and Z. The entire collective is being overhauled. Actually, the entire collective is being, unknown to us, reprogrammed. And he says, what you are seeing now, beloved, is the end coming close. The end is coming very, very close. But those whose cellular programming is acutely strong, is very dense, whose mindsets are steeped in scarcity, who live in the darkness of utter ignorance, they are reacting to the overhauling with tremendous force being exerted against the overhauling. And this is what you are seeing as evil coming up. But beloved, he says, the end is very near. It shall come to an end. If you and I start trembling and our faith starts shifting, then we will not be of any use as frontliners. We have to firmly focus on this truth. The end is near. It may take a year, it may take 2 years, it may take 3 years. The end is near. And then JadeFire said something else. I said, how? And he says, look back at the last 6 months of your life. Did any of you, anyone, not a single human being on this earth, had any knowledge or idea that there would be a pandemic that would take over the world? And he says, in 6 months, what has been the change? Can you say that there has been no change? And of course I couldn't, because I know there has been change. I'm so aware of it. We are all aware of it. He says, in the separation that this quarantine has put you in, what have you done personally? You have taken the help of technology to join your forces with so many, a number you would never have been able to reach. You have used an enforced separation, but you have risen above it and you have moved into togetherness. And like you, millions have done the same. And are you still saying that you cannot see the change? And in exactly this way, he says, we shall bring in changes. Every few months, there shall be something else that shall come to our door. And just as we got a little rattled by COVID, we will get rattled. And then as the months pass, we will adapt. And each time we adapt, we shall come closer. And our collective consciousness shall rise. And then there will be a something else. And then there will be a something else. And this shall continue for the years to come. For at least 3 to 4 years, if not a little more. And he says, we can only do this because the end is near. Remember what JF had said last time, every single person has already awakened. But most of us are pretending that we are asleep. If you and I are attending the Awaken series every week, we can't pretend anymore. And I gave myself a huge talking to that, you allowed your faith to flounder. Again, you pretended that you are asleep. We cannot. You and I are frontliners. If you are here today, if you are listening to this today, it is because your soul has chosen to be born in this time so that you and I could be frontliners, the seekers of spiritual truth, changing our cellular structure, changing the programming of our cellular structure so that the energies we emit change the others, so that the energies that we emit move away the thorns and the rocks in the path of humanity. That is why you have taken birth. So many of you have repeatedly asked me, what is my soul mission? Here is your soul mission. Are you ready to take it up? Because if you aren't, if you are just willing to stand by and watch, then someone else will have to work even harder to take your place. You know, JadeFire said something that was so amazing, which I've written down, exact words. He says, when any energy doesn't work anymore, it automatically changes its form in order to attain for itself a more sustainable form. And he says that is what is happening right now. The energies of our collective consciousness of the ego are not working anymore. And in everything that we are seeing as world problems, this is the evidence that it is not working anymore. And the COVID is just the first step to the energies of our human collective consciousness of the ego changing very naturally, to attain a more sustainable form. But friends, it's trying to change something that has been alive and thriving and entrenched for thousands of years. This will not change in a week, in a month, in a year. But if you and I persist every week and refuse to stop, within a few years, you and I shall have certainly changed our personal world. But together, our mass, we shall have changed the world there. You see, there is nothing there or here. But we keep looking at it there, and therefore we make it out to be someone else's problem. And that is why JadeFire has said, change what is not working in your world, here. Then it is your problem. It is no one else's problem. You can't make it anyone else's problem because it's your world. Yes, we are looking at these large turbulent waves in the sea. And we are standing by on the beach and wondering, isn't anyone going to take care of this storm? The storm is raging. Why isn't someone doing something about it? And JadeFire is saying, let each one of us do something about it. Let us be the models, the role models. Let us be the examples. Let us be the leaders. This is why we took birth. This is why we took birth. This is why you and I are alive today. Let us not go down the blame mindset. Each time we blame, let us remind ourselves, hey, that's coming from scarcity mindset. Pull yourself back. JadeFire said, along with the gratitude, morning and night, he says, add one more layer now. The morning gratitude, he says, once you have been grateful and you've voiced and expressed your gratitude, connect to the God you are and ask yourself, for today, who am I? For today, what is expected of me? For today, what change can I make? For today, who am I? For today, what is expected of me? For today, what change can I make? Yes, initially, because your brain and your ego does not wish to permit this connection with your deep God, you will feel as though you're drawing a blank wall. Pursue it every day. Very soon, you'll be thrilled to find an answer. It will come to you as a word or an awareness or a picture in front of you. Then what is your responsibility? You've been told who you are for that day. You've been told what is expected of you for that day. You've been told what you have to change on that day. Those 24 hours have to be used for that single-minded focus. Even as you go about doing all your earthly tasks, those tasks shall be performed under the umbrella of these three answers. Changing what is not working in your world. There is only one way to change every single thing that is not working in your world. Only one way to change every single thing that is not working in your world. And that is to change, to completely eliminate the belief in separation. Just as I asked JadeFire to inspire me with a meditation for the last week, I'm going to ask him for this week as well. If it comes, I shall of course share it with you all. But remember, God and I are inseparable. Stop believing the lie that we have been programmed to believe. God and I are inseparable. God and I are one. I love you all. I am you. You are I. We are all God.